All right, hello everyone. This is your first lesson for physical anthropology in spring of 2021, 2022. Holy cow, the years just keep flying by in this pandemic. Spring 2022 in physical anthropology. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. And we are going to talk about what is anthropology. And so immediately you've got a fossil skull. This is Tong Childs. This is a juvenile. This is a 3D printed version of Tong Child. What's really cool about Tong Child is this fossilized brain as well. So you can see some of the shape of the brain. Of course, this is not a mature brain by any means, but this is a species of hominin called Australopithecus africanus. We'll learn much more about that later in the semester. So what is anthropology? So this is Alfred Kroeber, who's an anthropologist trained under Franz Boas. He says anthropology is the most humanistic of the sciences and the most scientific of the humanities. And so anthropology is really this discipline that's living on the border between the sciences and humanities, kind of bringing those together to really get at questions of who we are and where we come from. Margaret Mead, another anthropologist trained by Franz Boas. Franz Boas is the father of American anthropology. She says anthropology demands the open-mindedness with which one must look and listen, record in astonishment and wonder that which one would not have been able to guess. So what is anthropology? Well, it's the study of who we are and where we come from. It's the study of humans. If there are questions about humans in any sort of way, there are anthropologists that study those. And this goes from studying humans in terms of our biology. That's what this class is based on. We're going to be looking at historically called physical anthropology, but over the last couple of decades, it shifted to biological anthropology. Let's just not caught up with that. So there's biological anthropology, which is interested in humans as biological beings. And this is looking at our bodies, our genes, our evolutionary histories. We can look at pathologies. We can look at infectious diseases, anatomy, fossils, the shapes of our bodies in the past, our bodies in the present. There's archaeology. Archaeology is the study of human cultures in the past, and you're looking at the material remains left by the people who lived in the past. You have cultural anthropology. If archaeology is the study of humans, cultures in the past, cultural anthropology is the study of human cultures in the present. So cultural anthropology is interested in living peoples. And then linguistic anthropology is the study of human language. So all of the aspects of human language. And then applied anthropology kind of cuts across all of these. So it's basically just anthropology that you are using to directly produce some kind of outcome. So this could be forensic anthropology and trying to understand and identify a victim of murder. It could be cultural resource management, which are archaeologists that are contracted by the state or the federal government that go to construction sites to make sure there are no important archaeological artifacts or archaeological sites being destroyed. Epidemiology is applied anthropology, looking at how disease spreads in communities. There's lots and lots of, and then so a lot of people say they fall into one of these anthropological categories. I am kind of a biocultural anthropologist. I call myself an environmental anthropologist or ecological anthropologist, but I do both biological anthropology and cultural anthropology. And so historically, the development of anthropology can be traced back to these three important kind of Western historical occurrences. So you have disruptions caused by industrialization, the rise of evolutionary theories, and spread of European colonialism. With industrialization, you have all of these rural people moving into urban spaces to work in factories. And so this kind of sparked an interest in these very strange people, which are part of, the same country, but live very different life ways, and moving from these rural spaces, more agrarian lifestyles into these urban spaces and working in production and manufacturing. You get the emergence of evolutionary theories, particularly after Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace could discover one mechanism of evolution, natural selection, and this is kind of used in many different ways, and we've refined our understanding of evolution and whatnot. And you have colonialism. during the development of anthropology, you have an interest in understanding the exotic peoples that European colonial powers were coming in contact with. And in many ways, the colonial powers were using anthropologists to come up with better ways to control their kind of colonized subjects. Anthropologists themselves tended to lean more towards trying to study um, other people's, one, to have a broader understanding of what it is to be human, two, to understand what human life might have been like in the past. Unfortunately for them, you can't study a living people thinking it's going to teach you a whole lot about what people were like 100,000 years ago, because the world has changed. And then for other anthropologists, they're interested in coming into these colonial sites and trying to study cultures that they were worried were going to go extinct as the colonial powers oppressed these people and suppressed their cultural practices and destroyed their languages. Looked at this already, but this is just kind of a diagram. If you want to pause here and just kind of read through stuff, I'm not going to go through all of them. Otherwise, we'll be here for a week going through each of these kind of subfields within anthropology. But broadly, archaeology, as I said, studies past cultures through the material remains, their houses, the trash they leave behind. In some cases, they're written records for historic sites and historic archaeologists. But you look at trash, you look at bones left, you look at fire pits, houses, tools left behind. So that's what we mean by their material remains, the stuff they leave behind, and including their own bones. For cultural anthropologists, they're interested in the social lives of living communities. And this, it tends to be performed through a particular kind of practice called participant observation. This is doing ethnography, so doing qualitative research, but with participant observation, instead of just going in and watching what people are doing and conducting a couple of interviews, you live with the community, you live in the community that you are working with, and you do all the things that that community does. And you kind of embody kind of membership in that community, so that not only are you able to observe what people are doing and record that, not only are you able to talk to people about what they're doing and understand it through their eyes, you also experience it yourself. And so it's a very involved methodology. Linguistic anthropology, interested in language, all aspects of language, the development of language, the evolution of language, how language changes over time, how we use language, the sounds themselves that are produced when speaking, or when using other forms of language that aren't vocal language, but body language, for instance. And biological anthropology, which is what this class is all about, focuses on the physical aspects of humans, our evolution, health and disease, behavior of non-human primates, our closest relatives in the animal kingdom, our genetics, what we eat and how it affects our bodies, and the impact of social stress on the body. We'll talk about all of these in the class to a degree. So it's important to know that anthropology itself is an interdisciplinary field. There are anthropologists that look a lot like chemists. There are anthropologists that look a lot like physicists. There are anthropologists that look a lot like historians, like geneticists, like endocrinologists, like journalists. So we do lots and lots of different kinds of things, but anthropology is a discipline united by these concepts. Culture, so what people do, when and where. And if you ask 1,000 anthropologists for a definition of culture, you'd probably get 1,001 different definitions. But basically, culture is like shared meaning within a group. And it's reproduced over time, both through teaching, but also through practice. So how we live life reproduces culture. You have cultural relativism. This is not moral relativism. It states that what is right or wrong is determined by one's cultural environment. Cultural relativism is methodological. So if you're going to understand another group of people, you need to understand it through their own systems of logic and not imposing your own logic onto them. That would be ethnocentrism. So you want to understand why they do things through their own cultural logics, not through your cultural logics, if you're not a part of that culture, of course. Diversity, whether it's diversity within the species, diversity between species, diversity of languages. Diversity is a central part of anthropology, of doing anthropology. Change, Everything changes all the time. Cultures change, they're not static. Language changes, it's not static. Our bodies, our biologies change, they're not static. And then finally, holism. Understanding humans are not just our biology, we're not just our culture, we're not just our language. We are all of these things together. And we'll talk about the cake metaphor probably in the next lesson. And so hold on to that. But holism is basically the idea that if you're going to understand humans, you need to understand them as whole beings, cultural, biological, speaking, thinking, living beings that exist not just now in the moment, but through time. They existed in the past and will continue to exist in the future. You want to understand all of those things together to figure out who we are and where we come from. That's our first lesson. That's what anthropology is. I'm going to try to keep these very short and to the point. Let me stop sharing so that you're taking off bite-sized chunks. There'll be one more lesson for this week on science, and I'll talk about the cake metaphor in that probably. And I'm looking forward to continuing to get into the course with you. Take care. See you soon.